NASA could regain control of the lost Voyager 2 probe after a heart.
NASA had once managed to briefly regain control of the lost Voyager 2 probe after detecting a faint heartbeat signal, but no one expected it to ever truly wake again. Drifting in total darkness for years, Voyager 2 was cold, silent, and officially forgotten until, without warning, it spoke. The most distant human-made object in the universe was suddenly sending usable information back to Earth. At first, engineers assumed damage or transient glitch, but the timing felt wrong. Something had altered the signal. As the data reached Earth, old mission record resurfaced and unease spread through deep space labs. This was not a message sent to us. It felt like a response, as if whatever answered had been listening long before anyone noticed. Voyager 2 had gone quiet after years of dwindling power, its systems shutting down one by one as it drifted through interstellar space beyond the sun's influence. Launched in 1977, it had already achieved wonders, flying past Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, measuring magnetic fields, radiation, plasma, and charged particles, before being sent into the vast emptiness between the stars, a region it was never meant to actively explore. By 2018, it crossed into true interstellar space, and in 2023, after a series of faults, it fell completely silent. For 11 years, there was nothing, no signal, no heartbeat. NASA marked it inactive. Then a pulse appeared, barely detectable, short and clean. It arrived at Voyager 2's exact frequency. That alone was disturbing. The probe did not have the power budget to transmit anything new, yet it did, and not randomly. The pulse arrived at a perfect interval, synced to an internal clock that should no longer have been running. As engineers examined the data, the situation grew worse. Voyager 2 systems had not powered on chaotically. They activated in a precise sequence: power regulation, memory access, then the transmitter. Random damage does not behave that way. Inside the transmission packet, engineers found something Voyager 2 was never designed to create: a new file. It wasn't sensor noise or a system log. It was something added. As Earth listened, the signal repeated every 6 minutes without drift. Each time, a low-frequency hum rose just below the range of human hearing when converted to audio, heavy and pressing, like pressure building inside a sealed chamber. Engineers described it as a warning tone, not because it carried words, but because it felt intentional. NASA ran exhaustive checks. No uplink commands, no internal timers, and no known failure modes could explain it. Voyager 2's computers were weaker than a calculator, yet it behaved as if something had guided it step by step. Then a second pulse arrived, stronger, clearer, more confident. The signal strength increased even as the probe moved farther from Earth, something that should have been impossible. It felt as though the source had adjusted itself, aware that Earth was listening. 6 minutes of silence followed. Then the signal returned. At that moment, engineers stopped calling it a glitch. They called it an event, and the awakening of Voyager 2 forced a chilling realization. Whatever caused this did not come from Earth, and it did not originate with the probe itself. It was now clear that the signal did not come from Voyager itself. It came from somewhere else. The strange awakening forced scientists to dismantle the data layer by layer, searching for what had entered Voyager 2's transmission. As they focused on the revived signal, something far more unsettling appeared. Deep space monitoring systems, designed to track particle movement and plasma disturbances far beyond the planets, detected a large mass moving in the same region as Voyager 2. At first it resembled background noise, but as the data was cleaned and aligned, a shape emerged. Something was there, something enormous, and it was moving. The object was detected roughly 500,000 kilometers behind Voyager 2, a close distance in interstellar terms. According to every model, that region of space should have been empty, no asteroids, no debris, no rogue planets. Yet the readings showed a defined mass on a clear trajectory, and it was not drifting. It was moving with intent. As engineers watched the tracking data update, they noticed the object's speed was not constant. It adjusted in small, precise steps. Each time Voyager 2's velocity shifted, slightly, due to solar pressure or plasma drag, the object changed speed as well, with a delay of only seconds. At that distance, such responsiveness should have been impossible. It meant the object was either predicting Voyager's motion or reacting almost instantly. Thermal sensors only deepened the mystery. The object emitted no heat, no radiation. Every known object with mass gives off some infrared signature, even cold rock. This one did not, ruling out asteroids, planets, or any known spacecraft. Radar simulations made things worse. The object's radar cross-section kept changing, sometimes wide, sometimes narrow, sometimes nearly invisible, suggesting it was actively altering how it reflected signals, bending light and radio waves around itself in ways no known material can. When the data sets were layered together, a terrifying pattern emerged. The object remained perfectly positioned behind Voyager 2 at a constant angle and distance, adjusting smoothly with every movement of the probe. It never overshot, never lagged. It simply followed, silently and precisely. One engineer described it as something hunting without haste. Then came the most disturbing discovery of all. When the object slowed down, Voyager 2 slowed seconds later. At first, this was dismissed as coincidence, but it repeated again and again. Voyager 2 had no engines capable of changing its speed. It was supposed to coast freely through empty space for millions, even billions, of years. Yet its motion was now clearly linked to the presence behind it. This was no longer just about strange signals or corrupted data. It was about influence, about guidance, about control. NASA ran emergency simulations, testing every known physical explanation. Gravity could not account for what they were seeing, nor could magnetic fields, plasma effects, or any conventional interaction. The only conclusion left was the most disturbing one. Something intelligent was near Voyager 2, and it was not observing from afar. It was following. Once the object's presence was confirmed, scientists began combing through decades of archived space data, and in doing so uncovered a link they were never meant to find. The nightmare reached back to Voyager 1. A young NASA intern, assigned the thankless task of reviewing old Voyager 1 telemetry logs from the early 1980s, was the one who reopened the door. These records were considered obsolete, dusty digital artifacts long written off as noise. But buried in the data was a strange burst from 1983, a short pulse of static that engineers of the time had dismissed as interference and forgotten. When the intern compared it to Voyager 2's recent signal, his hands began to shake. The timing was nearly identical, the spacing between pulses matched, and even the rise and fall of the waveform looked the same. When that old static was processed through modern AI systems, the random noise fell away, revealing a clear, repeating pattern, structured, controlled, and unmistakably artificial. It carried the same slow rhythm now echoing from Voyager 2. The implication was chilling. Whatever was stalking Voyager 2 had also been there in 1983, close enough to Voyager 1 to leave a trace. It had followed both probes into deep space, unnoticed and ignored, remaining silent for more than 40 years. Digging deeper, the intern uncovered another detail that silenced senior scientists. During that same period in 1983, Voyager 1 had slowed slightly. The change was small, well within acceptable margins, and had been blamed on sensor drift and aging systems. No alarms were raised, no investigation launched. Now, seen alongside Voyager 2's recent behavior, the pattern was undeniable. Both probes slowed shortly after the strange signals appeared. The timing was too precise to be coincidence. Something had been near them, influencing their motion without ever touching them. The realization spread quickly through the team. This object was not new. It had not just arrived. It had been out there longer than many of the scientists now studying it, tracking humanity's farthest messengers in silence. Everything about it suggested awareness, an understanding of when it was being watched and when it was not. For decades it had followed unseen. Now it was no longer hiding, and that meant something had changed. As this truth settled in, scientists turned there, attention closer to home, searching for any sign that the signal had reached Earth before. That was when they found something far worse. The first warning did not come from space. It came from Earth itself. Late at night, radio telescopes on different continents began recording a deep, slow echo, each station initially believing it was alone, each assuming local interference, until the pattern repeated. Within hours, reports began piling in. The same pulse was being detected across North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. When the data was aligned, fear spread quickly. The signal matched Voyager 2's pulse exactly. Every 6 minutes, without drift or error, the timing repeated down to the millisecond. This was not random noise, it was synchronization. Whatever was following Voyager 2 was now linked to Earth. As scientists traced the signal's path, they uncovered something deeply unsettling. The pulse did not strike one location at a time. Instead, it spread across the atmosphere like a pressure wave. Communication stations felt it first, followed by dips in long-range radio systems. Satellite links stuttered, and for a brief moment during each pulse, even the air itself seemed to react. Then power stations began reporting anomalies. Grid operators noticed tiny flickers in electrical flow, nothing strong enough to cause blackouts or trigger alarms, but unmistakably patterned. Every fluctuation aligned perfectly with the pulse, as if something invisible was brushing against the power grid, testing it, touching it, then pulling away. Scientists then focused on the signal frequency, and what they found erased any remaining sense of comfort. The pulse mirrored hydrogen's natural frequency, the most common signal in the universe, stable, predictable, and everywhere. But this signal was inverted. An inverted hydrogen frequency does not occur naturally. It does not come from stars, gas clouds, or known cosmic events. Creating it requires control, intent, and a deep understanding of how the universe behaves and how to reverse it. That inversion became the key, a deliberate fingerprint. It was not hiding. It wanted to be recognized. When analysts layered a signal over Voyager 2's transmission, something even worse emerged. A second signal was hidden inside the echo. It did not match Voyager 2, did not follow its rhythm, and did not originate from a probe. It was quieter, slower, and deeper, appearing only after the Earth echo began. That meant one thing. Earth was no longer just listening. It was part of the exchange. The realization hit hard. The object in deep space was no longer merely following humanity's machines. It was interacting with the planet itself, transmitting through systems people depended on every day. This was no longer a distant mystery. This was contact without permission. As the team isolated the second signal and broke it into frames, they understood the danger was only beginning. Buried within the pulse was structure, something that looked unmistakably like a message. When scientists finally separated the inner layer of the signal, the room fell silent in a way that felt wrong. Deep inside was a thin band of binary code, clean and precise, existing where it should not. Voyager 2 was never designed to produce such output. Its systems were old, limited, and thoroughly documented. There was no function within the probe capable of generating this code. As engineers examined the data line by line, the fear intensified. The binary stream did not behave like noise or corruption. It followed rules and repeated with intent. When translated into visual form, the screens filled with shapes that defied immediate understanding. Tight, controlled spirals appeared first, turning inward with perfect balance. Sharp, straight lines cut through them at precise angles, never intersecting by chance. Then closed loops formed, sealed, complete, and flawless. These were not drawings but constructions, governed by strict mathematical limits. Experts in communication theory recognized the foundation immediately. The shapes matched known methods for transmitting information without language, concepts humanity had devised but never achieved at this level. The complexity was not just advanced, it was refined. Then something even more disturbing occurred. As analysts adjusted filters and ran deeper scans, the shapes began to change. Spirals shifted slightly, lines rearranged, and loops closed differently depending on how the data was observed. It was subtle, but undeniable. The code was not static, it reacted to attention. At first, software errors were blamed, but the behavior repeated across different systems, laboratories, and tools. Every time the signal was analyzed, its internal structure adjusted. It was not breaking, it was responding. Artificial intelligence systems were brought in to search for hidden layers and instructions. Within minutes, the AI flagged repeating structures buried inside the shapes, no longer images, but commands, sequences behaving like instructions waiting to be triggered. The conclusion was chilling. This signal was not a message meant to be read once. It was a mechanism designed to force a response. Each repetition increased pressure on frequencies critical to Earth systems. It was not asking if anyone was listening. It was pushing until someone answered. And as the analysis continued, another impossible detail emerged. Several of the shapes aligned with known orbital paths of stars circling, patterns humanity should never have seen reflected back in this way. The data describing black hole orbital paths was precise, including distortions caused by extreme gravity. Information Voyager 2 could never have recorded, let alone inferred, since it had never been near a black hole and carried no instruments capable of observing such systems. This meant the source was not guessing. It possessed knowledge Voyager could not obtain. When the final layer of the signal was decoded, all remaining doubt vanished. The shapes collapsed into a single output, not a word or warning, but coordinates. A reset of the probe systems in mid-October would allow communication to be re-established, and the coordinates pointed far beyond the outer edge of the solar system, deep into interstellar space, in a region that should have been empty. The location was exact, deliberate, and place to be found. With the message no longer abstract but directional, scientists compared the signal against known cosmic patterns and discovered matches that should not exist. Then the object behavior changed in a way that shattered any sense of control. It stopped shadowing Voyager 2 from behind and drifted sideways into open space, breaking the clean tracking pattern, before beginning wide, deliberate circular paths around the probe. These were not gravitational arcs but controlled orbits, with the object choosing distance, angle, and timing completely. Its speed shifted impossibly, drifting one moment, accelerating to extreme velocity the next without build-up, thrust, heat, or exhaust. Each movement triggered violent magnetic spikes on Voyager 2, while nearby charged particles bent sharply as if space itself were being warped. The distortions matched equations known only from theoretical physics, models of warp-like fields that bend space rather than push against it, concepts humans had never built and many still debated as possible. Yet the object produced them effortlessly. It reflected no light, appearing darker than space itself, while scans suggested it were hollow, a shell wrapped around nothing visible, raising the terrifying question of what it was designed to protect or carry. As its loops tightened, focused energy bursts swept across Voyager 2, scanning every antenna, sensor, and system with deliberate precision. This was not curiosity. It was inspection, as if confirming expectations. Then, without slowing, the object pulled away in a straight line, accelerating beyond tracking limits and heading directly toward the coordinates hidden in the signal. As it vanished, one realization settled over the room. This was no reaction, it was execution. Moments later, Voyager 2 responded one final time on its own, releasing a last burst of structured data before falling permanently silent. At the center of that transmission was a single repeating symbol, a spiral collapsing inward until it crushed itself into nothing. AI system compared it to known communication markers and reached a chilling conclusion. Similar symbols in human systems mark quarantine zones, restricted corridors, and warnings of retreat. It did not mean welcome, it meant danger. The horrifying shift became clear. The object was never studying Voyager 2 out of curiosity. It was intervening because the probe had crossed into a controlled region of space. It slowed, scanned, altered, and redirected the probe, not through violence but containment. The coordinates were not a destination but a boundary, a line enforced long before humanity was advanced enough to notice it. Voyager 2 crossed it by accident, and Earth was now flagged. The implication was devastating. Humanity may not just be observed, but managed. Our technology crossed a threshold not because it was powerful, but because it was predictable, readable, and easy to track. If such a system could subtly influence a probe in deep space, it could one day disrupt satellites, navigation, or communications near Earth without a single explosion. Conflict without violence. Exploration had always moved forward without asking permission. Now there was a terrifying possibility that permission existed, and we did not have it. Whatever sent that final warning knew where we were, and next time, it might not send one at all.